shoot ahead to the next slide, please. So listen, I'm a liver transplant guy. I'm an Alberta guy. And I've spent a lot of time on this stuff. Go ahead to the next slide, please. So this is I'm a numbers guy, and this slide, and there are two of our colleagues on this as well, Linda and Laurie. We know that this number 15 down at the bottom right-hand side is not quite totally accurate, nor are all of the others. But what it really represents is deceased donors per million of population in donation. And everybody's got their different numbers and different approaches to analyzing them. But whenever I got involved with this side of things, I found this one to be disturbing. And maybe Alberta is 15, maybe it's 20, but it's not at the top left, right? It's just not way up there. And, it may be 17, 18, 19, whatever the number is, and everybody will argue things, but it's just not at the correct end of the scale as far as I'm concerned. I think Alberta is a place where we should be performing at the top end of the scale, not the bottom end. Could you go to the next slide, please? And this is just another slide showing the same kind of thing, basically, where Alberta is and where Canada is in terms of other jurisdictions, which, everybody's got different policies, and we know that those things are important to those different cultures and different organizations. So next slide, please. So anyway, I sat in on a presentation last week by Dr. Sam Shemi, and it was really an important one about transplantation in Canada. And you can see the 4 points there about increasing the number, quality, making sure that all the patients and families that might be donors are taken care of well, and making sure that the ethical, legal things are done appropriately, and to ensure that the system, like we in Canada are really obsessed appropriately with trying to take all of this in a very ethical and appropriate manner. Next slide, please. So I'm part of this crowd, which I'm not chairperson of. It's actually Linda Powell, who you'll see on the screen. But anyway, we put this group together in January 2017, and we've had the Kidney Foundation in Alberta, both branches that spread out across the country, really, really amazingly supportive of us. And we all think that organ donation and transplantation is a huge, huge thing to achieve in a more effective manner than we have, at least in Alberta. I personally think in Canada as well. So we've presented our numbers, which I'm going to bore you with later, to everybody that counts in Alberta for decision-making processes, and everybody's listened to us. But these guys so far have been a little bit slow to enact things. So next slide, please. So in Alberta, I was really impressed with Dr. Caulfield's numbers. I want to get to the depth of those, but we see right now about 2,900 people on dialysis in Alberta. And in 10 years, that's going to be 4,500 to 5,000 people on dialysis. And that's a great way to extend your life. But, it's not a total answer. And there's been a new program implemented called SEND, SEND, with a budget of $2.3 million. That is a first step that I think we at Alberta Organization and Kidney Foundation think is an initial good step. We think a much bigger budget is appropriate. And the following slides, I'm sorry to bore you, like really sorry to bore you, but I think the budget should be much bigger. Next slide, please. So if we could decrease the number of people on dialysis over the next 10 years by about 1,000 people, we'd be saving $100 million a year that can be deployed through the donation transplantation system. And that whole system, including the kidney people, but all the other organ people, could save 2,000 to 3,000 people. And you guys that are listening here today, hopefully, you guys are the most impactful voice to make a change here. And we really, I think, all need to hear your voice about transplantation. I don't know how you're going to marshal your voice, but I think you should. Next slide, please. So our little group, the Alberta Organization Group, which Lyndon Powell is chair of, we decided that we needed to focus on the donor shortage here. And we want to be friends with everybody that is involved in this, although I personally find it difficult to be friends with everybody that is in the way. But we also have found out during our analysis that this is boring to most people, but the numbers actually make sense. They actually make economic sense. So in Alberta, we spend $22 billion a year on health transplant and on healthcare. And it's a very efficient way to deal with things. So next slide, please. This was a bit of a study done by one of Canada's most renowned students and advocates of transplantation about what the attitudes of the critical care doctors in various provinces are with regards to how to deal with organ donation. And unfortunately, for us in Alberta and for those in New Brunswick, you can see the pink going to the left. You know, the people are just not aware. So there's a necessity for education of the critical care ICU docs kind of thing. Next slide, please. So this is my last day at University of Alberta when I left with my liver transplant, and I got to know James Shapiro and Laurie West. And, you know, these guys are trying really, really, really hard to figure out how to get the work together between donation and transplantation. Next slide, please. These are basic numbers that you guys can go back through when it's convenient for you about some of the basic metrics about how many transplantations, how many people on dialysis, the cash economics. That, you know, it's my view of cash economics. This is not the government's view of cash economics. And the macroeconomics, again, my view as distinct to anybody else's. But when you look at things, I mean, we're talking about, you know, billions of dollars over 10 years. And somebody needs to understand whether those estimates are right or whether they're wrong, and then take some decisions about things. Like it's a, you know, when you think about the number of people on dialysis, the number of people in transplant, how it affects their lives, their involvement in the economic environment, you know, one needs to really think about that and determine how to make decisions about the right way to go around donation and transplantation. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm not going to go through these things in detail. The next few slides are really boring. Lots of numbers. It says there's lots of numbers that people have to think about when they're analyzing these things from a numeric point of view, just, you know, other than a human lifestyle point of view. So just flip through a couple of slides here, please. Oh, no, we're okay there. Okay, so we've done a few scenarios, and the dashed blue line, which I wish I could point at, is what we think is the status quo line about the number of lives saved. And then we go up through our scenarios to the top yellow line that suggests that if we do things better, we're going to save a lot more lives. Next slide, please. And then this one is in reverse. How many patients are on dialysis? And the top dashed blue line is the one that says this is where it's going if we stay at the same rate of donations, deceased donor per million patients. And then it goes down if we sort of move to world standards in terms of and I'm not sure how to best say this. Like, I mean, if we're at 15 to 20 deceased donors per million, we're at the bottom range. If we're at 45 deceased donors per million, you know, we move down the line and, you know, we reduce the number of people on dialysis by 1,000 or so. Next slide, please. These ones are just sort of cost slides. They're hundreds of millions of dollars over the next 10 years that we'd redirect in the right direction. Next slide, please. Same thing here. Next slide, please. And same story here. So we've presented all of these to the Minister of Health, the CEO of Alberta Health, and they all kind of listen to us, but then they nod. Next slide. Yeah, this one talks a little bit more about the economics around the broad community, not just the healthcare system. And we're talking about billions of dollars of difference here, okay? And we might not be totally right, but directionally, we're totally incredibly right. And we just can't seem to get traction. So next slide, please. Oh, yeah, just go through these 2 or 3. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Okay, so we're back to this one. And, maybe Alberta is 18 or 19 or something now, and all the others are different. These might be old numbers, but we are right at the bottom of the comparative list. So next one, please. Okay, so I had a liver transplant 6 years ago. And a number of you know a bunch of this stuff about the things that I've been able to achieve or be part of since then. And, I don't know, I don't know what are the most important ones on there. I mean, perhaps it's my mother, my aunt. My mother, I'm an only child, so I took care of her in a compassionate way, and my aunt, who had no children as well. And I did a bunch of other things. So let's just click on, please. So I think you in this community, it sounds like there's 72 participants here. I think you guys need to take forward the message that transplantation can save lives. And I mean, the ability to enhance the lives of those that are on dialysis through transplantation is incredible. And there's dollars to be saved. Like, I'm sorry, I'm an economist, but I mean, you guys can save a ton of money for our healthcare organizations. And I don't know why we are delaying these things. I have no idea why the negative inertia is there that says, oh, we got to take some time, do more studies, do this, do that. Like, you guys, the kidney community, really is the biggest voice here. And I think you guys have got to get out and figure out how to communicate with the people that make the decisions. I haven't figured out how to do that. I've spent like 4 or 5 years trying to figure out how to deal with these guys, and I'm not sure how to do that. So next slide, please. So I'm going to show you a couple of little things. Okay, so that was my first Father's Day after I got my transplant. Next slide, please. Yeah, there with my mom, my partner. Next slide, please. So here I am taking this picture, and we're in the research lab of James Shapiro at U of A, and on the right is Dr. Greg Powell and Linda, the founders of STARS Air Ambulance, and we're trying to figure out, okay, what do we do next? Next slide, please. So I go and have a retreat at Tofino, and then I go to the farm. Next slide, please. And I have a birthday party in London with my 3 daughters. Next slide, please. And kind of an engagement announcement and all that kind of stuff. Next slide. Oh, and some reunions with people that actually can write checks and do things in our particular end of Canada, and maybe overall. And next slide. Oh yeah, weddings, more weddings. Next slide. More weddings, more family. So, you know, I'm very fortunate to have been an organ recipient. And I think, like, I can't believe that in our part of Canada, that, next slide, if there is one, I can't believe that we are so behind the curve in terms of donation, when so many lives can be improved, changed, enhanced, and given some kind of extra years to do things. Anyway, that's it from me. I think all of you guys on the line should buckle down and figure out how to make the system move appropriately. And I don't know how you're going to do that, but